All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College, coming to you with the last, because I've completed Chapter 24, the last presentation I'll be doing from the SAM's Teach Yourself Bootstrap in 24 Hours text. So the one I'm going to be working on right now is Hour 23, using less and SAS in Bootstrap. We, as always, we actually have 5 objectives in this chapter. Learn what a CSS preprocessor is, some basic features of less, how to use less to update a Bootstrap website, some features of SAS, and how to use SAS to update your Bootstrap website. Bootstrap, as it says, ships with plain CSS, but you can use both less and SAS preprocessors. You can use them to adjust how your Bootstrap website looks. In this hour, we learn about these preprocessors and how to use them with Bootstrap. All right, what is a CSS preprocessor? Middle of page 375. Most people think CSS doesn't need preprocessing, and for small sites, that may be the case. But preprocessors make doing large and extensive changes across a website much easier. A CSS preprocessor, as mentioned right there, is a language that extends CSS, which is another language, all right, and adds traditional programming features like variables, loops, if statements, etc. The code is then compiled into standard CSS for use in web browsers. Some of the benefits of preprocessors, 5 or 6, are shown right there. They help you enforce the dry principle of do not repeat yourself. They end up with cleaner CSS. They provide for faster updates. So if you have to change a color scheme or something on a site, you can do it much quicker. Cross-browser support is already built in. The scripting is fairly simplistic. It's fairly straightforward to those of us who have any programmatic background, and allows you to share CSS across websites. So, again, what is discussed in here, sorry about that. That one's already done, sorry. There we go. All right, so less is the preprocessor that ships with Bootstrap by default. Some of the features that it has are it allows you to create variables, something called mix-ins, which we'll look at in just a minute, operations, and functions. One of the big differences between using less and using SAS is less starts with the @ sign when you create a variable, and some people don't like that. So a variable in less is a name-value pair which you define at the beginning of a less file. Again, the variable or name starts with an @ sign and is separated by the value that it is concerned with by a colon. You can then use that variable anywhere you want that value to appear in your CSS. So again, in many ways, setting up something with an @ sign, all right, allows you to treat it as though it was a constant. When you compile the less, it will generate the CSS by replacing this with this particular color code. All right. Next are mix-ins. And as mentioned right there with mix-ins, mix-ins are a way to include properties from one rule set into another rule set. And they give here an example. All right, and what the author says. Suppose you had a class called Center Block that centered block elements. You could include that class in any other style property you wanted centered as long as you did it as a mix-in. And they're showing it here. All right. This is example 23.2, which is shown in your text on page, sorry, I'm a little bit behind here. That's on the top of page 377. So this will take your H1 tags and make them 80% wide and centered. Mix-ins also allow you to create default values, but then change them in specific instances. For example, as the author says here, you might want to have most of your borders be 3 pixels wide, but you might want to be able to change that width when necessary. So it's 3 wide, but notice we can come in here, and here by default, since we're using border width, and green bordered with nothing on it, it'll take the default 3 pixels. But here, we're adding. All right, you can look at it again. It's kind of like what we've had in some languages, and what you'll see in the PHP class is a default value. Operations allow you to adjust any number, color, or variable using math functions. All right, and they show how you can do a subtraction here. This is a little bit out there, and again, you probably want to look at that for a while. And they mentioned that this one creates a second color that's related to the first color mathematically. It's the base color minus a value. All right. Now, less has many built-in functions, as mentioned here, that you can use to adjust your CSS. And it takes CSS and basically converts it from something that, for lack of better words, is pretty much static to something much more dynamic. Notice there's functions to modify strings of text, list functions to get the length of a list or specific elements in a list, math functions, type functions, and functions to help you change and blend colors that you already have. In Bootstrap, you see a lot of color operation functions to create monochromatic color palettes. All right, so the listing that's shown here, 23.5, which is on page 378 in the book, as mentioned, it shows the grayscale color scheme created by using just black and the lighten and darken functions. Now, the author mentions here, these functions are much easier to understand what's going to happen than using color math mentioned earlier. But it's like anything else. All right? There is a learning curve to this before you can become proficient in it. Here's the LESS homepage, and it's at lesscss.org. As always, there are examples and a lot of other stuff in here. This one page, all the stuff that's in this one page is what's shown here. Okay? Now, the author says it's easy to use LESS with Bootstrap because Bootstrap is built with LESS by default. You can use the source LESS files rather than the compiled CSS to create your own custom designs, or you can use variables and mix-ins that are already created. If you're going to work with LESS files, you'll need to have a setup for compiling them. Boot recommends using Grunt, which is at gruntjs.com. So they show an example here on pages 379 and 380. And it says to use Grunt to install Bootstrap, you must have Grunt on the system. You also need the Bootstrap package installed. This try-it-yourself exercise walks you through the steps you'll need to both install Grunt and install a Bootstrap package on a Linux server using the command line. All right. I'm not going to run through that. I have not done that. Hopefully by the time we get to that point in class, I will have done it. After you have Bootstrap and Grunt installed, you can edit the files in the source code directories to reflect what changes you want to have made. Finally, as we end up talking about less here and transition into SAS, the caution here. Run grunt commands in the less directory. If you run grunt commands from within the distribution directory, all your files will be removed because there are no less files to compile there. If this happens, don't panic. Change to the less / directory and rerun the grunt command, grunt dist, which will recreate your entire distribution directory. All right. The rest of the chapter, starting on the bottom of page 380 and going pretty much through the summary on page 384, talks about SAS. Notice that SAS is at SAS-lang. All right, and they call it CSS with superpowers. It's another CSS preprocessor. And notice here, many web designers are switching from less to SAS because SAS offers more features than less does. It also solves some of the problems that less can prevent, such as the @ symbol with variable names. It doesn't use the @ it uses the $, much like CSS does. So SAS has many of the same features as less, including variables, mix-ins, operators, nesting, loops, and logic. Variables work the same way. But again, they start with a $, as opposed to an @ sign. Mix-ins also work in a similar way, but you define them here. We're back to using the @ sign. We use the @mixin directive. You can pass variables to your mix-ins as well. So once you've learned one, transitioning over to the other one shouldn't be a real big stretch. Mix-ins is mentioned there, and this is on the top of page 382 in the book. They're often used to deal with browser prefixes. You can find lots of examples of useful SAS mix-ins online. I'm sure that if I go out here, this was less, so let's just go to here. If I come out here and type in SAS mixin examples, yeah, just 23,000. And again, there's an article, there's 8 mixins you must have in your toolbox. Here's SAS basics from the SAS guide itself. A list apart has, I'm sure this is a very long article on do not repeat yourself, getting that out of your SAS mixins, etc. So again, there's plenty of sites out there that will help you. The author gives an example of one of her favorites, which is mixin size, which takes 2 parameters, width and height. And it says you can then set your bootstrap elements to specific sizes with just 1 line of code. Like in less, you can use operators to do math. You can perform other operations, number, color, string, and Boolean. And that's just a subset. Nesting lets you include the rules for one property inside of another property. This makes CSS appear more like HTML itself when you can nest. So the example here, 23.9, which is on the bottom of page 382, shows a simple nested style and then how it compiles into CSS. You can extend styles, as mentioned here, so that they have the same styles as the previous style, but with something extra. You can almost look at that like inheritance, and they show an example here. Although less has some logic statements and a little bit of looping, SAS has these facilities completely developed. So whereas less offers when, and you can do some looping, SAS has if then else, for loops, each loops, etc. So the author recommends that you start with the SAS reference online, and as you can see, you're going to get a boatload of stuff there. See how long this thing is. Using SAS with Bootstrap on the bottom of page 383 and going on to page 384. Bootstrap is built on less, but there is an official SAS port on GitHub under https github.com/twbs/bootstrap-sas. To try it yourself, all right, they run through a few things here that you can use. Notice they have you use something that is not free. It's $10, so you may or may not want to give that a try. So in this chapter, we kind of learned what less is and what SAS is, did a little bit of talk on what each of them are, and kind of a little compare and contrast. The Q&A on the top of page 385, where can I go to learn more about less and SAS? Again, their home pages. If I customize the Bootstrap variables, what will happen when a new version comes out? And as it says, it depends on how you update your files. If you edited the Bootstrap files directly, those files might be overridden. Your best solution is to create all your changes in a separate file and load the file using include files with lesser SAS, as they showed previously in the book and in the examples here. All right, final quiz on 385, 386, and 387. Number 1, why would you want to use the CSS Preprocessor? The answer is C, to manage large or extensive changes on a website. Number 2, what is a good reason to not use the CSS Preprocessor? The answer is A, when you have a small site with little or no CSS. Number 3, what does DRY mean in the context of CSS preprocessors? The answer is B, do not repeat yourself. Number 4, true or false, CSS preprocessors let you use if-then-else statements. The answer is true, especially SAS. Number 5, how do you define a less variable? The answer is it must be prefaced or prefixed with an @ sign. So it's A. Number 6, true or false, less mixins do not accept parameters. False. Number 7, which of the following is a less function? The answer is C, lighten. Number 8, how do you define a SAS variable? The answer is with C, the $sign. Number 9, true or false? The following code is valid in SAS. The answer is true. Number 10, which preprocessor allows for for loops, less or SAS? The answer is C, SAS. So that's it for this book. I do want to mention one more thing before I put this to rest, so to speak, and that is, and I've said this to you before, but I am saying it again, and that is, if I go out here to webcodegeeks.com, all right, they also have programming stuff under javacodegeeks.com. But right now, we care about the web stuff. And if I go under the CSS tag, you'll notice there's Bootstrap. There are 11 lessons under here. Bootstrap tabs examples, Bootstrap popover example, Bootstrap panel example, Bootstrap tooltip example, Bootstrap layout example, Bootstrap form example, Bootstrap drop-down menu example, Bootstrap table example, Bootstrap navbar example, Bootstrap grid example. If I count those, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And one more bonus, Twitter Bootstrap modal example. The reason I'm showing you that is in the lecture that we have on Wednesday, the 18th of May, which is the last time the class meets, I'm going to go over the Bootstrap layout example. What that does is it allows you to build something that pretty much, let me see, I'm just going to download it right now. All right, so there it is. Put it right here, and I'm going to extract it right there and open it up. This is what we create. All right, so notice there is All right, there is a little slideshow, which you can go get to and around in many ways. There's a services thing in here, a team page. I don't know why that graphic isn't showing. A simple form and some quick links. We're going to build something. I'm going to make some changes to it. Probably use different images. Probably use different stuff in here, but we'll see. And I think that's Taylor Swift looking at it, but I don't know. And I might come up with different pictures. All right, so we'll go through that one. If I have time, I would like to go through each one of these in their own lecture. Okay, that's pretty much it then for your textbook.